In this section, we're talking about the law of sines. In the law of sines, you're trying to either find a side or an angle of a triangle that does not have a right angle. So in this triangle, as you can see, there are 3 angles and none of them are right angles. So the formula for the law of sines tells us that if we take the sine of any of the angles, capital A, B, or C, and divide it by its corresponding side, lowercase a, b, or c, we should get the same ratio 3 times. So basically, if I took the sine of angle A and divided that by side A, I would get the same thing if I took the sine of angle B, divided that by side B, or took the sine of angle C and divided that by side C. So looking at this example, we see that there are no right angles. So we know that we cannot use SOHCAHTOA in order to solve for a side or an angle. Now, in order to see if we can use the law of sines, what we look for are pairs. And when I say pairs, you can almost think of it as like a big brother and a little brother, or a parent and a kid. So if I have a capital B and a lowercase b, or if I have a capital A and a lowercase a, or if I have a capital C and a lowercase c, then I know that I can use the law of sines to solve. So if we remember, the capital letters stand for the angles and the lowercase letters stand for the sides. So do I have an angle and a side given already? If the answer to that question is yes, then I know I can use the law of sines to find a missing side or a missing angle. So it may be helpful to label those opposite sides so that you can see exactly what sides and angles you have provided. Let's start with our given information. If we look at angle C at the bottom, and then we look across the triangle, we'll be looking up at the top of that triangle. So that side 41 would be considered side C. And likewise, if we look at the angle B that's labeled in yellow, and we draw an arrow all the way across that triangle, we end up on that side that's labeled 28. That would be side B. And then lastly, the side that we don't know, that's across from angle A. So that would be considered side A. Now that all of the angles and sides are labeled, it's easy for us to tell that we are given a pair. We're given angle B and side B. Now, what if we're asked to find angle C? Well, we do see that we're given side C, so all we have to do now is use the law of sines, use the given pair that we already have, and set it up to solve for angle C. If we recall, the law of sines asks us to take the sine of an angle and divide it by its corresponding side and set that equal to the sine of another angle and its corresponding side. So looking back at our example, which 2 letters would we be using? Well, since we are given the pair of B's and we're looking for a piece of the pair of C's, those are going to be the 2 families that we're going to work with. Sine B over B and sine C over C. So the first thing we want to do here is set up our equation using the pairs that we chose. Then we'll actually plug in the given information that we already have. Since we were given angle B, side B, and side C, we can go ahead and plug those into our equation and begin to solve for angle C. Once we plug in our known values into the law of sines, we'll end up with an equation that looks like this. And if you remember, when we have 2 fractions and we're setting them equal to each other, we can solve them using cross multiplication. Some of you may also refer to this method as the butterfly method because we're going to multiply the numerator in the first fraction by the denominator in the second, and the numerator in the second fraction by the denominator in the first. When we do this, we end up with the equation 41 times the sine of 39 is equal to 28 times the sine of angle C. Now remember, we're trying to solve for angle C, so there are 2 things we need to get rid of here. The first thing we'll want to get rid of is the 28. The second thing we need to get rid of is that sine function, and then C will be by itself. So once we divide the 28 on both sides, It cancels on this right side, and we're left with 41 times the sine of 39 over 28 is equal to the sine of angle C. But how do we get rid of the sine? We're going to have to use inverse trig ratios in order to get rid of our sine function. And once we take the inverse sine of both sides, the inverse sine and the sine on the right side cancel out, leaving our C by itself. And on the left side, we're left that C is equal to the inverse sine of 41 sine 39 over 28. Once we put that in the calculator, we get 67.15. So of course we have to make sure that this angle is correct. Well, this is how we do that. By going back to this original setup where we listed our given information, all we need to do is substitute angle C for our answer. And if the ratios are equal, then our answer is correct. If we put both of those values separately into the calculator, we'll see they both give us 0.02. So we know our answer is correct.